Welcome to Psyched Up Cinema. Where film and psychology meet. With my background in film production and Kate's background in psychology, criminal justice, and social work, it certainly makes for one cinematic show. Join us as we combine our interests to examine psychological topics and how movies use them really well or really poorly. Prepare to be psyched up.
What's up,
Greetings,
Earthlings?
Oh no, that wasn't even planned. Welcome back to the show. We are psyched up to be here.
Today's going to be an otherworldly experience.
Some may say it will be out of this world.
Extraterrestrial.
Well, that is actually a different movie.
It's also just a term. It's not just a movie name. So shut up.
Welcome back to our show. Today we are covering Starman, 1984 movie directed by my guy, John Carpenter, of course.
Your bestie.
My best friend. If John Carpenter ever wants to have a chat with me, I would
Let's
love that.
collab.
Oh my god, the John C's collab. That'd be so epic. And our last names both begin with CAR. So,
Wow, that's crazy.
so I
It's
think
meant to be.
I think we're like somewhat related at that point.
Yeah. Is there like a male version of Soul Sisters? Your soul brothers?
so bros? So yeah, today we're covering Starman. It's my pick, of course, because it's a John Carpenter movie.
Who would have
So
guessed?
I know, who would have guessed? So should we hop into it? Anything you need to say, or
Nope.
it feels weird because Mickey 17 we had so much preamble to
Yeah.
cover. So why don't we get right into it? Starman, directed by John Carpenter, of course, as we already covered moments ago in our recording. Released in 1984, the same week as David Lynch's Dune.
Whoa.
The first Dune movie, Dune.
Oh.
Dune! This movie stars Jeff Bridges and Karen Allen. It made $28.7 million domestically in the US. I don't know what it made worldwide. So
Mr. Worldwide.
Mr. Worldwide. It's on a budget of $24
Money
million.
time, cha-ching. You forgot.
I keep forgetting. Is the bit dead if I keep forgetting?
Was it ever even a bit if you forget every time?
I don't think it started until Hunger Games.
I don't know.
Yeah, the one before Hunger Games. Whatever one it was. Anyways, Money Time is dead, unfortunately.
Bring it back.
Maybe, if I remember. So, this is the only John Carpenter movie to get an Oscar nomination.
What?
Do you want to guess what the Oscar nom was? It's one of the bigger categories.
So it wasn't for the special effects, was it?
No, it wasn't for special effects.
I don't know the categories.
I'll narrow it down.
It wasn't Best Picture, right?
No. But it's one of the bigger categories. So we already eliminated Best Picture.
It's not Best Actor or Actress, is it? Is it? Could it be?
It could be. Which one, though? Actor. It is indeed actor. Jeff Bridges got nominated for playing the alien. Does he even have a name, or is it just the Starman?
I think she just calls him by the name that he had before.
Yeah, Scott.
Scott.
This movie was originally probably, I think in like 2016, going to be remade by Sean Levy. Do you know who Sean Levy is? I know you know his movies, but
I have not a fucking clue. You
Sean
know
Levy
I'm not a names person.
Sean Levy directed Night in the Museum,
Oh.
Deadpool and Wolverine. Um,
I feel like I wouldn't really mind it being remade just because the effects were so dog shit.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a big remake person,
Neither
so
am
and
I.
also I feel like Sean Levy would make it like Omega mid. So I'm not really sure if I want to have him remake this movie. Get,
Okay.
let's get someone else on the job here. Why don't we why don't we hire someone else?
John
But
Carpenter just
let's
does it
rehire John
again.
Carpenter again. Yeah, I don't think I'd really like it if it was Sean Levy. I don't know. I just think he's kind of mid.
All right, buddy.
All right, buddy. So yeah, I talked about what the movie's about, or kind of the general things, and how it's going to be remade. And thankfully, it hadn't by Sean Levi or whatever his name is. Um, so what are we talking about? What the fuck are we talking about?
Let me tell you, we're going to be talking about the 5 stages of grief.
Any comments or anything before we get started, or
I didn't really know a lot of what to expect going into this movie. I knew it was going to be about an alien and grief and those kinds of things, but in the first scene, she had her pants off. Why? That's all I have to say. Why? Come on.
that's what you're stuck on is
Yeah.
why she was
Why'd she have her
already.
pants off?
I don't know. She was getting comfy.
I think they were trying to appeal to the male audience,
The male fantasy.
the male gaze.
Um, so that's your comment before we start talking about the quality of the movie is why she
I
was
don't
a
know. What else do you want me to say about it? Damn.
I just wasn't expecting it. Okay. So I guess now that we're
That
hopping
was literally the first thing I had to say about the movie when we were watching it is
it
where are her
was.
pants?
Well, I mean she was just getting comfy. And I mean she's been drinking, so maybe she didn't realize she didn't have any pants on.
But like, why not just all or nothing here? Why you got a long sleeve on, but no pants? Are you cold or are you hot? Make up your mind.
Well, it's like one of those things. There's like where you wear like nothing to bed except for socks, and it's just like
Ew! Who does that?
I've done it before.
That's disgusting. Wear
Well,
absolutely nothing.
not absolutely
Okay,
nothing,
I
but
was
like
thinking butt ass naked only socks, and that I think you should go to jail for.
no, more so like not like naked, but like gym shorts and like socks, because like my feet get cold.
Then if your feet are cold, is your upper body not cold too?
No,
What
because
the fuck?
it's covered under the
What's
blankets.
wrong with you? Are your feet not covered by the blankets? Why are you sticking your dogs out if they're
They
cold?
are. It's just they can't because they're at the bottom of my body. They can't get the blood circulating. So
That's not how that works.
yes, it is.
No, it's not.
That is exactly
If
how it
you
works.
are laying flat, there is no good reason why your feet are having a hard time
Well,
getting
yeah, because
circulation.
my heart is like up here, and like it has to go all the way down to my feet. I'm fucking cold down there.
I I have a bone to pick with socks to bed. I think it's wrong.
You know, it's
It's a crime.
scientifically proven that people tend to sleep deeper when they have wearing socks to
I
bed.
don't care. It's
Mm,
disgusting.
you can't combat science, so
Yes, you can.
unless it's RFK science, then it's not real. So,
I mean, just make up the data.
so okay, now talking about the movie, so we're kind of hopping into it here, where she's not wearing any pants. But besides that, what are some of your other thoughts on the movie? What did you like about the movie?
I liked um I liked her initial reaction to things and how that evolves over time. Like the initial I'm gonna shoot this dude. Um, what the fuck? He's wearing my husband's face.
Well, also she sees it, like, transform,
Okay,
right?
that I have to say, for the time, those effects were probably
Those are pretty good.
peak.
Those are pretty good
Um,
effects. I feel like they still, like, partially pretty
they
held up
held
today.
up. The green screen parts, not so much, but that part did. It did look pretty good, and it did look disgusting, so I can't blame her for her reaction there. But it's interesting to see how she goes from trying to stay detached from him and being freaked out and trying to accuse him of kidnapping her, which he kinda does, um, and get herself free from him, and then she's making up excuses for him and protecting him, and then she fucks him, and the evolution.
They really go down the hole here. Let's talk about the green screen. Let's get the green screen out of the way so we can stop bringing it up. So, yes, the green screen is not good,
No, it's
but
so bad.
I will make the argument that the effects themselves look good. It's just when they try to put the real people on the effects, it doesn't look good.
Yeah, because you can literally see the green.
Yes. Yeah, you can see the green or, like, the bold outline. Also, this is 1984, so, like, I'll give a little bit of leeway. The green screen wasn't really, like, good until, like, I would make the argument, like, late '80s, early '90s. That's my argument. I mean, we watched Last Crusade, like, not too long ago, and I'm pretty sure that movie is '89, and the green screen in that does not look good either.
Yeah,
Go to movie, though.
it's pretty good.
Pretty good. That's a raving review from you. That's like a 5 out of 5 on Letterbox.
I don't do letterbox. We've been over this.
Okay, I got a bone to pick right here. I'm gonna call you out live on the podcast. You don't have Letterbox,
No.
but you have that fucking thing where you rate books or you log that you read books. What the fuck is the difference?
The difference is you don't get to look at it. And I want to be motivated to read more because I spend my whole fucking life with my phone in my hand scrolling. I do it when ads come on the TV. The first thing I do is pick up my phone and scroll. I need some kind of incentive to do something non screen related. And when I track things, it makes me more inclined to do them again. Like exercise, similar concept. I track that, it makes me more likely to do it again. I don't need more motivation to look at more screens. I'm doing that really well already. Thank you.
But movies are better than TikTok, confirmed.
Not when
Back
you have
backed by science, backed
I
by my
have the in
science.
I have the attention span of a 4-year-old. So, it's hard for me to get into new movies sometimes, so more inclined to revisit ones I've already seen and yeah, and TikToks because they're short.
You gotta delete TikTok. Oh.
You can pry TikTok from my cold, dead fucking hands. Thank you.
Anyways, back from so are we done talking about the green screen? Anything else you want to add about the green screen effects? That way we don't have to keep coming back to it. Because I know if we don't tackle it in full right now, we're gonna keep talking about it for
I
like
have
an hour
nothing
and
else
20
to say. I
minutes.
was just gonna say that it looks like shit. That's it.
Green screen does look bad, but can you agree that the effects themselves look good
There's nothing
for the
wrong
most
with
part?
the effects. It's just when you see the outline, it's
Yeah.
just so jarring.
Yeah. No, no, I mean I agree. I like this movie a lot, but yeah, the effects leave a lot to be desired.
Kind of takes you out.
But speaking of other things that are good, you mentioned like Karen Allen, her performance in the beginning. We obviously had to talk about Jeff Bridges, because he does very good. I think I really like he like is like the line between like a child and like somebody who's like extremely smart.
Yeah, I like his little personality quirks of not understanding things, but then as soon as he makes the connection, he understands it perfectly well, regurgitates it, and uses it in reality.
Yeah. And then he if when he attempts to do it and it like doesn't work whatsoever, Like when he says like "up yours" to like the guy who's like filling up the gas. But I really like him, and I really like the way he progresses throughout the movie. I feel like a lot of this movie is about like grief and kind of like losing the loved one, but I also feel like it's about showing like humanity and about love, which I mentioned. I mean, you could make the argument that those two are one and the same. Um,
Love and grief are intertwined, I
y-
would argue. You
yeah,
can't
absolutely.
have one without the other.
What else? What other things did you like about this movie? Kind of talk about Jeff Bridges. We haven't really dived too deep into Karen Allen. I think there's a lot to say about her.
What would you have to say about her?
Well, I would say I really agreed with what you were saying. Her development, like, or at least in the beginning, like how she reacts. I think she definitely ties that line between being like having a realistic reaction and also like driving the plot forward. Because I feel like there's a lot of time in movies where like in order to initiate the story, somebody has to do something like extremely unrealistic or act completely irrational.
Yeah. I mean, going from, ew, look at this alien. It's a baby. Now it's a teenager. Now it's my husband. And then being like, okay, alien, get in my car.
Well, was getting she was held at gunpoint, so she definitely did not want to be there. And she was definitely more in shock when the alien turned into Scott. But I think there was still like resentment there. She didn't really want to be there. What would you say is the point where she changes from like being held at gunpoint to the like wanting to finish his journey with him and get him to Arizona?
I would say it would be the point where they were at that diner and she goes to escape on that bus and leave him behind. And she was going to leave him the credit card and the car keys to just do what he needs to do on his own. But then she changes her mind.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with that. It's definitely the biggest moment. There's also like some small moment, like when he's singing that fucking Frank Sinatra song.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like she's starting to like get one over a little bit.
Well, I would say that I think some of that comes from as he's learning how to act like a human, he's more and more reminding her of Scott, and it becomes less of like an uncanny valley, it's really creeping me out type situation,
Mhm.
and more of like there's some element of familiarity to it.
Yeah, when I think it also goes back to what I was saying about the film was about like humanity. Feel like when he first landed, he's just like this like non-person. He has like no personality. He's like very straight faced. He has like no idea what's going on, but he's starting to form that personality and humanity and started to absorb the world around him, where it starts to make him more individualized rather than just like his alien self.
I don't know if I would say he's got no personality. I think he just doesn't know how to express things in English the way he needs to.
I disagree because towards the end of the movie, she starts to ask him what his world is like. And he says, yeah, we don't have like war and hunger and stuff like that, but he doesn't have personalities. Like people aren't really unique where he's from. So that's where I'd make the argument where he becomes more individualized throughout the
More
movie.
individualized, yes, but in even if, let's say, all the aliens are carbon copies of each other, there's no distinction. Them as an alien species are different from humans.
I guess, but I'm talking more so personality wise rather than themselves, like the way they look.
Well, if we're comparing the people to the aliens, they're different. That means he's got a different personality. If we're comparing alien to alien, then I guess he's got no unique personality there, but
Well, that's what I mean. Because I mean, he comes down as an alien, where it's just him being like a boring self rather than like the way he ends up at the end of the film.
I suppose. I still don't know if I'd use the word personality.
I do.
Okay.
So
Congratulations. I think part of it is in the beginning, he's just confused.
yeah. I mean, yeah, he's a fish out of water, so
I mean, do
he needs to.
you seem like a really interesting person when you're just shocked and confused?
Actually, that's when I'm in my most. That's when I'm in my zone. That's
Oh,
when flow
really?
zone. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's why we're recording this in the middle of the ocean right now because I just have no idea what's going on. So we just need to have some personality. And in the middle of the ocean, but our neighbor's dog is still here barking.
He's on a raft.
He's already followed us here.
He
See,
got
that's
sent here just to piss us off.
we tried to get away from him, but then he came back or
Yeah,
she
and
came back. We don't even know the dog.
I think it's a girl.
Oh
Harry
well.
has now joined us as well.
Yeah, and you spilled my water over the
Oops.
floor.
At least she's not barking.
That's true. Yeah. Um. What else? Oh, I like the alien CIA guy. I don't know, like what
Alien
exactly.
CIA. The scientist guy?
Yeah, the scientist guy. Yeah,
The alien
yeah,
CIA. He's a man in
yeah.
black.
He's a Man in Black. Oh my god, is he a Men in Black? Is he the
That's what I
founding
was
Men in Black?
saying.
No way.
This guy gets suited up.
He's getting suited up. Uh, I really like him. I like his performance throughout the movie. He absolutely comes from a sense of curiosity, and I
Yeah.
think carries out so well in like his upbeat demeanor throughout the movie.
I liked his character a lot more than I thought I would,
Hmm.
especially in that last scene where he lets him go. Um, I didn't think there was much to him other than his curiosity and wanting to know what was going on and learning more. But you get to see it really comes from a place of wanting to understand rather than wanting to exploit.
Right. And even though Earth leaders sent out something to try to bring aliens and to try to welcome them, the first thing they try to do is try to capture them. But I feel like the CIA alien guy is actually comes from that place of wanting to somewhat welcome the alien more
Yeah.
so out of curiosity rather than just like capturing it.
Isn't he the one that recorded the welcome track?
I think he helped make it. I think he was saying he was one of the people who helped make it, which that's
Yeah.
a sick gold vinyl, I gotta say.
It is pretty sick. I love that on alien spaceships, they have a record player.
Well, I guess you don't really need much because you could just scratch against it and it would make the sound.
True.
It would play the Rolling Stones, "I Can't Get No Satisfaction," which just randomly starts yelling. I love that cut where he's like, she's asking him a question, and then he's fucking responds to that Rolling Stone song, and she's like, "Fuck this," and it drives in the opposite side of traffic. I think it's
That
so
would have been my breaking point too.
it's like the way it was cut together. She's like, "All right, I'm fucking done with this thing." She's like tries to kill herself. Really. What do we think about their chemistry? How she grows to be afraid of him to having a kid with him in the end.
I think, like you said, some of it was to push the plot forward. I can't imagine somebody would become comfortable that soon with
Mhm.
the idea of an alien assuming their husband's identity. I would think there would be more time spent in resentment, especially considering they don't have the same personality. But hey, there's only so much you can do in a movie runtime.
Right. No, I agree with that. I do buy it. I feel like the movie I feel like even though the movie is on the shorter side and it does have to kind of go from a leap from the I'll just use the word resentment, even though it's not really the right word, from resentment to love.
Fear, I
Fear,
guess.
yeah, that's a good way of putting it. From fear to love. I don't know. I kind of buy it. I think just through like the series of events in the movie, and she does. Well, Scott does save her from dying because she gets shot by a shotgun, and then he saves her.
True. That's true.
And I feel like he starts to learn more what love is by like watching the TV and kind of learning more about it. And I think that's after when when she describes what love is or like what it means to lose somebody, which I really like that scene monologue that she had.
It's really interesting that to him that's a foreign concept, love and grief.
Yeah. Because I don't think they really cover if anyone dies where he is.
Yeah, for all we know, he could be immortal while on his planet because we know when he's on Earth, he's at risk of dying.
Mhm.
But I don't know, maybe they live forever there.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. Um, but I really like her monologue. When so like when she's describing, well, like they're a part of you and then a part of you dies, and you have to learn to live with it. I don't know. I just really like that scene because it really goes to describe. Did he ask the question? I forget if he asked the question whether or not she was like what was grief or what was love. I think he asked what was love, right?
Yeah. And I think she kind of took that in the direction of what it means to then lose someone
Yeah,
that you love. I don't think he outright asked.
right. Because I think also just the idea of her looking at her husband and then having to still process he is still dead, even though his physical form is in front of her.
And this physical form of him is asking what love is when she had love with the real one.
Hmm. But I really like that scene. This is like one of my favorite scenes in the movie. I like that whole bar scene because then saves the deer. They have that cool showdown.
I think that him saving the deer was a big turning point as well because she realized that I think that's where she realized that although he didn't understand love, he could feel it
Hmm.
or at least compassion and was there not intending to do any harm.
Right. And then he says, "Up yours" to the guys.
I love
That
that.
was funny. Yeah. I also really want to talk about the end. See, like last year when we covered In the Mouth of Madness, I had said that I think John Carpenter is like one of the best directors when it comes to ending a movie, and I feel like it also applies in this case. What do you think?
I think it was a good ending. I think it tied things up nicely.
I also like just the way it ends, where I don't know. It's just all like it's like that's it. That's the movie. He went home. Done. So it's like
Yeah.
because I feel like in movies, like they spend another 15, 20 minutes wrapping stuff up, and it's just
Yeah.
like cleaning the movie up. Where it's just like, nope, he went back home. She's pregnant. She's gonna have his kid, sort of, but it's still gonna be Scott's kid. That's it. Done. It's
Well,
just
this
like
ending
no,
also leads to an implied future as well.
right. And I also like just like the visuals of that, where um, they use a lot of red in the movie, and I know it signifies something. I just can't put into terms what it does signify because, well, he won. Scott wears the red, like all red, basically the whole movie, and then
Mm,
he walks into red, and then when the ship starts taking off, it's like a heavenly white light, um, which I feel like is partly like her getting over the process, or not getting over, but like more so coming to terms with
accepting.
accepting, yeah, like that this is her husband, like her husband's gone. And I'm not sure red is supposed to signify a sort of looming like threat or death or like moving over.
I wonder if it was intended as being a reminder of the traumatic way that she lost Scott
Hmm.
because he puts on the red and she's really off put by him at first. Um, and you could tell she's really trying to figure out what she even feels about it.
Hmm.
And then the red happens again when she's losing him
Yeah.
because he's going back home. So maybe it pertains to grief or traumatic loss, but I think in some way it relates back to her having lost Scott prior.
So do you think maybe red could like signify her past trauma in a sort of way?
Yeah.
and like the presence of that. Because I think that would make sense. Because at the end, I mean, they're all surrounded in red when like the ship is coming down and it starts snowing. It's just all red around them, and then Scott rocks. Scott walks into the red, and then all the red dissipates, and that's when it turns all into that white light with like the snow still falling down. Which I love the snow. I think the snow is a nice like added touch to it because I think it's so fucking cool. I also love the snow, so major bias.
This is what happens when you move from Mass to Florida. Then you like the snow.
I do like the snow. The snow's fun.
Ew.
Unless I have to wake up in the morning and brush off my car, then I'm like
Exactly.
gross.
Especially when that happens in April. Might
Yeah.
I remind you?
um but yeah, what do you think of that? What do you think of like the just like the ending kind of like visually summing everything up?
I think that the visuals do a really good job at conveying how Jenny's feeling, like going from the red to the white. I think really symbolizes her acceptance in that moment
Mhm.
and being able to move forward in her life. Because before it seemed like she was really stuck for a while, um, revisiting home videos and drinking while doing so doesn't exactly show that you're moving forward past your grief, or
Right.
not past it, but being able to move forward with your grief.
Mhm. No, I agree with that. And I'm sure we're probably gonna dive deeper into it when we start talking about like the stages of grief and how this movie shows. So we're not gonna dive. We'll put it like a bookmark in that. We'll come back to that. A little bookmark slide. Speaking of bookmark, let's talk about Las Vegas. Let's talk about gambling.
Let's go
Let's go
gambling.
gambling. I'm so happy they went to Vegas. I don't know why. It brought me so much joy seeing them go to Vegas. It could have been completely cut out of the movie and then like have said like, oh, the train dropped them off at Arizona. But I fucking love them going to Vegas.
Yeah, I think that that was also another part where she was growing to not be so freaked out by him because he is so likable, and look at him winning all this money, and he's being really quirky and funny with these people, and
Yeah. And just like somebody who's so new to Earth gets dropped off in Las Vegas. It's just like and he's just like absorbing all this information. He's like, "What's
and
going
you
on?"
know what? I think people in Vegas are an alien species anyways. They're really something else.
Except for all of our Las Vegas viewers. You guys are cool. You guys are out of this world awesome.
You're cool aliens.
Cool aliens. um,
Still aliens nonetheless.
maybe don't call them aliens.
Oh, ew, that has implications. Extraterrestrials.
So much better. Wow. I'm so glad. Um,
What I mean to say is, in Las Vegas, there are very normalized, interesting behaviors, such as the man that I saw standing on a street corner with a sign that said, "Kick me in the nuts," for $10 or something like that. And then I would watch as men, women, and children lined up to give this man $10 and kick him in the nuts. And he stood there like nothing happened. That's what I mean.
what a guy. That guy's probably rolling in cash.
I'm sure.
What if he was just wearing like a cup the whole time?
No,
Like,
his sign explicitly said, "No cups, no tricks." I don't know, maybe he had, like, dick removal surgery.
yeah, maybe he has like maybe his real balls are like up like in his ass and he has like fake balls like dangling
He
down.
tucked them back in.
He tucked them back in. Um,
He taped them.
anyways, unfortunately, penis ball kicking guy wasn't in Starman, so we
That
can't
would've
talk too
been
deep.
really funny if they
It
were,
would have
though.
been really funny. And then they also go and buy a Cadillac like right after, just like buy the most expensive car once they win, they jackpot. I don't know. I just really like the Las Vegas because I feel like the movie is, I wouldn't say heavy. It just it doesn't have a lot of joy to it. It has some funny parts, but I feel like the Las Vegas part is, like, very joyful. I feel like it's, like, a fun sequence.
Yeah, it's very lighthearted, and you get to see them just enjoying their time together. It's you don't really feel the pressure of him going back to his home in that moment.
Mhm. And I also feel like it also, like, solidifies the connection a little bit more where we're able to step away from the plot for a second and just have some fun. And I think it really makes you connect with Scott and kind of see where Jenny's coming from at the end and stuff like that. Even though this is after they had sex, but I think it still applies.
Well, you get to kinda see what she sees in him,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um
and maybe also what she saw in Scott, because we don't really get to know much about him.
yeah, just through
So,
the projector really.
maybe he was a really fun, loving guy, and she, in that scene in Vegas, got to see elements of Scott
Mhm.
in this ET.
Maybe Scott loved gambling. Maybe he loved gambling his money.
He's a chronic gambler, and she's like, "That's my man."
That's him. Um Anything else you wanna talk about in terms of, like, the quality movie that doesn't have to, discuss grief? Because I feel like that's a lot of this movie. Um, Anything else you can think of?
About the quality of the
I
movie?
don't know, just about the movie that doesn't have to do directly with grief.
I don't know that I have any other thoughts there.
So, what are the 5 stages of grief?
Ahem. So the 5 stages of grief were introduced in 1969 by Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. So these stages of grief are known as either the 5 stages of grief or the Kubler-Ross theory. Um, and these stages include denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And according to the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross Foundation.org or ekrfoundation.org, they depict emotional responses to change, loss, or shock, but they're often depicted in a linear sequence. However, in 1974, Dr. Kubler-Ross emphasized that these stages are not necessarily fixed. You don't have to go through them in that linear order. She just put them like that because it's easier to understand
Mhm.
visually. Um, just easier to grasp overall if you
Yeah.
think it's like a neat, orderly thing. But grief is messy. And so sometimes you bounce around. She wanted to clarify that. And she said that these stages are applicable to forms of grief, change, and loss. Um, Her work explored other emotional responses, including partial denial, anticipatory grief, shock, hope, guilt, and anxiety. And she even developed a kind of like a more advanced version of this, which I didn't even know existed until I did the research for this episode. But now she has the Kubler Ross change curve, which includes shock, denial, frustration, acceptance, experiment, decision, and integration, which I think is really interesting.
What do those exactly mean?
Um, so this website says shock is, kind of self-explanatory. You're surprised at what happened.
Mhm.
Denial, you don't believe it. You look for proof that it didn't happen to try to justify not accepting it.
Mhm.
Frustration includes recognizing that things are different. It can sometimes include anger, resentment that things have changed and they're not what you're used to. Depression again, self-explanatory, fucking sad.
Yeah.
Um, Experiment is initial engagement with a new situation, like, let's say, love after loss, going on that first date after losing your partner,
Mhm.
something like that. Decision, which is learning how to work the new situation, learning how to work in the new situation and feeling more positively. So your mood starts to go up and you're kind of getting into this new routine that doesn't encompass the person that's gone. And then integration is changes are integrated and a renewed individual.
Mm.
So you kind of have a new future ahead of you from what you may have planned before the loss.
Okay.
So I think that's interesting, but we're gonna more go off of the 5 stages of grief that are more well known, because that's what I'm most familiar with. It's easier to understand, it's more well accepted.
Mhm. I would like to tie back to experimental once we talk about the other ones because I think experimental could apply to the
Well,
film a little bit.
I'm not circling back here.
Okay, all right. Well, could you maybe make the argument that Jenny, at a certain point, I guess staying with him, not getting on the bus, counts as an experimental moment for her?
Yeah, yeah, because she's not trying to run away anymore. It's
Mhm.
something new.
Right. And even though it's still with Scott, I'll say that in quotes because it's the Starman. Even though it's with the Starman, it is a new person for her. It's like a new experience and it physically is not safe for her because I mean the military's out there and stuff.
Well, it's also taking a new path that she wasn't choosing prior.
Right.
Before she was running away from him, trying to get him captured, trying to separate herself from him, and then she decided to give it a shot. I would say that's
Yeah.
experimentation.
And I think also her doing the experimentation led to we probably don't see it, but I think it's like an implied. I think you said integration is the last one. Integration where she gets the kid that is the Starman's kid, but also kind of Scott's. Which I guess we don't know, but is probably led her to be like a newer person with like a new norm and stuff like that. Kind of does that make sense? What I'm
Well,
trying to go
now
at.
she gets to become a mother, which she didn't picture for her future before because she wasn't supposed to be able to have children.
Right. Would you say that's integration or would you say no?
I would say you could call that integration because she's also knowing that the original Scott's dead and that the Starman Scott is gone.
Yeah. Look at me making connections and stuff. We weren't even gonna make
Wow,
connections
look
to.
at you.
I'm.
Why don't you just
We're so good at this
why don't you
podcast.
just go to work for me? Do my job for a day.
I'm good. I'm not licensed,
It's okay. I
and you can't
wasn't
do my
for a
job
while
either because
either.
you're not licensed. So
Hey, I was unlicensed and practicing for a while.
that's true. That's illegal.
That's not illegal. I was under proper supervision and was on a pre-licensure track. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway,
Anyways, that doesn't exist for my field, so you couldn't take my job regardless. So.
oh darn. I really wanted to. What you do sounds like so much fun. Anyway,
Okay.
so the more widely known 5 stages of grief. I think it was important for Dr. Kubler-Ross to say, "Okay, this isn't linear. This doesn't happen in one direction and that's it. It's not like you go through every stage neatly and you never regress or you never skip something." I'm glad she made that distinction because I don't like when theories try to make a difficult concept really cut and dry.
Mhm.
Because, I mean, grief is so complex and it's so messy, and there's a lot of ups and downs, and there's progress, there's regression. It's a lot.
Yeah. And well, not to dive too much away, but I know you and I had talked about this after we watched the movie initially, but you talk about your beef with prolonged grief disorder. And I feel like that's a disorder where it tries to simplify something that's really complicated and something that can't be simplified within one criteria.
Okay. So the DSM-5 criteria for prolonged grief disorder requires that distressing symptoms of grief continue for at least 12 months following the loss of a close attachment, and the grief response is characterized by intense longing, yearning for the deceased person and or preoccupation with thoughts and memories of the person lost to the point where it's impairing your day-to-day life. However, how can you put a timeline on grief, especially to someone close to you? Also, prolonged grief disorder does not encapsulate grieving anything other than people that are close to you.
Mhm.
Like, no other forms of grief are valid?
Yeah.
I feel like make it all encompassing or not at all. I mean, I hate the diagnosis as is, but it could at least be accepting.
Right. No, absolutely. And I mean, like, I feel like it's so broad too, where it's just like, I feel like you could throw that term on anyone who's still getting over the loss of someone. And I mean, even when I'll just use an example as of like a parent, like losing a parent, that's like you grow up with them, and then it's like, oh, well, this is my first Christmas without them. This is my
Yep.
first birthday without them. And it's
You're
like,
constantly hitting these milestones and reminders that they're not there.
yeah. So it's like, if you're thinking that way, is it prolonged grief disorder? Because it's like you're still feeling it. It's like
They
it doesn't
have
make sense.
specific criteria, and you have to reach a certain amount of symptoms of distress to qualify for a diagnosis, but basically they draw the line at like clinically impairing levels of distress, and you have to exhibit a certain amount of these particular listed symptoms. But here's the thing, grief is so dynamic. You could be one day feeling like, okay, I'm all right. The next day, you think about, okay, well, my parents not going to be there when I get married.
Mhm.
And that could send you spiraling. And then it's like the grief feels fresh again
Yeah,
because maybe it's the first time you're grieving that particular idea of not having them there.
right. And I mean, I know this. We're not really talking about this in terms of the movie, but I mean, we don't know how long Jenny has been grieving Scott. We don't know how long it's been since he died.
And why should we stigmatize her reminiscing on him, even if it was past a year? Why draw the line at a year and say, well, if a year has passed, then it's problematic for you to continue grieving them in a way that causes impairment in your life.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I feel like she's also grieving more than just Scott. I mean, the idea is tied around Scott, but I mean, she didn't get a chance to have a kid with him.
Well,
Um,
I think she's unable to have children,
yeah, but
period.
even then, like, she still could have adopted with Scott. They still could have had
True.
like a
Yeah.
child together. And the fact that they can't even raise a family together because he's gone is something that she could still probably be grieving. We just don't really know the timeline, I guess. It's never really said how. I actually like how the movie kind of keeps that very subtle, or like doesn't really answer the question of how Scott died and when.
I
And I
think
like
they
how it
say
keeps
it
kind
was
of
an
vague.
accident,
Yeah,
and
they
that's
just
about it.
exactly. They just say accident, but like you don't know like what type of accident. If it was a work accident, car accident, it could have been like an emergency accident or something like that. I like how it keeps it very vague because I feel like as an audience, you imagine a very bad way for someone to go, and I feel like you put that on Scott
Yeah.
because it's kind of like an implied meaning towards it.
Well, I think a very large a very large group of people have experienced a sudden and traumatic loss in their lives. And if keeping it open ended allows them to put their own feelings into it more, then I think, yeah, it makes more sense to have it that way.
Right.
Like, oh, Scott could have died in a bad drunk driving accident like my friend did. And that makes me feel more for Jenny.
Right. And I hope the movie does it on purpose. I feel like it does. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think it's an effective way without showing what happened, but also making the audience feel a certain way because it doesn't get too specific.
Yeah, I like that about it.
Oh, anyways, enough jibber jabber about prolonged grief disorder. Let's talk about the 5 stages.
So, the 5 stages of grief, like I said, denial, anger, bargaining, depression,
Hmm.
acceptance. What do you think about the 5 stages of grief? Do you think that captures it well?
I think it does a pretty good job capturing it generally. I would say someone who loses someone they love hits probably I would say probably at least maybe like 3 out of the 5 of them, like when they're grieving somebody. So I would say, yeah, I think it's pretty accurate. I don't think somebody should look at it as like a one for one, like, oh, this is what's gonna happen next and
Yeah,
stuff like that. But I do think it's pretty accurate.
it's more of it's a model,
Hmm.
it's not a predictor.
Right.
I think it's important to take it that way
Hmm.
and to realize it's normal to progress along those stages, but then find yourself reverting back to prior feelings that you thought that you had gone through already and progressed past. Because, like I said, you're not just processing the loss, you're also processing the different things that that means for the future.
Right.
And you might be processing those things for the first time, like, oh, my parents never going to meet their grandchild.
Hmm.
They're never going to see me graduate. They're never gonna see me get married, stuff like that.
Hmm. Yeah, just like losing the elements and kind of like what we were talking about with the prolonged grief, kind of touched on that in the movie. Like, we don't know, Jenny still grieving like elements of Scott's loss without just grieving him directly.
Yeah. So I wanted to walk through the 5 stages of grief and what that could look like. So this actually comes from grief.com, which I
I
didn't
love
know
grief.com.
existed.
I'm always playing games on grief.com, so
Cool math.
it's like cool math games.
So in the denial stage, um, it actually is an adaptation to be in denial because it helps us to survive
Hmm.
in the beginning. Because oftentimes loss can be very traumatic and you may even be in a life threatening situation yourself. Like, let's say you get in a car accident with your partner dies. Denying that they're dead can allow you to focus on your own survival.
Hmm.
So, we're kind of designed for denial in the beginning. Um, the website says in this stage, the world becomes meaningless and overwhelming. Life makes no sense. We're in a state of shock and denial, why we go numb. We wonder how we can go on, if we can go on, why we should go on, and try to find a way to get through every day. Denial and shock help us cope and make survival possible. Denial helps us to pace our feelings of grief. I think that part's really important
Hmm.
because if you went through all of that, every single stage in one day, it'd be like whiplash. It would be way too much to
Yeah,
handle.
yeah, and I think we had talked about this a little bit. After we had finished the movie, uh, where it feels like Jenny doesn't really experience denial. Um,
Well, I think she's through it at that
right.
point. I would argue that Jenny is in the depression phase when we see her.
Mhm.
which I'll get into that when we talk about depression. But anger is the next stage, and it's also an important part of grief because when something seemingly meaningless happens, when we lose someone so traumatically or lose someone that feels so senseless, it makes sense to find something or someone to blame for that
Mhm.
because it feels like, why would it happen if nobody is to blame? Um, it's kind of like that black and white thinking that we talked about in the last episode.
Yeah.
Like, if somebody's gone, there needs to be a reason for it. So, who can I blame?
Yeah.
And it makes us feel better when we have a target because then we can take those feelings out on something that isn't just so deeply existential and
Mhm.
having to come to this giant revelation that sometimes bad things happen to good people and there's no reason for it.
Mhm.
So it might look like blaming doctors for not trying hard enough to save your loved one after an accident.
Mhm.
It might mean, let's say it was an accident involving someone who was babysitting your child. Even if the babysitter did everything right and it was a freak accident, like the kid choked on food or slipped and fell and hit their head, you might blame them anyway,
Yeah.
because then you have somewhere for those feelings to go.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's definitely I feel like that's one of those stages of grief where it's only applicable to maybe certain types of death. Um, and it probably doesn't happen with everyone, but kind of like what we're talking about where I feel like it hits most stages. I feel like that's a stage where it's like, depending on the way someone goes, I feel like somebody would hit that or not.
Yeah, and this website even says you might blame God.
Yeah.
Like, why did he let that happen?
Hmm.
Or for someone who's not religious, maybe they blame the universe or whatever they believe in. Like, how could this happen? Or maybe they think of karma, like this person had such good karma. Why would they be taken out of this world if they contributed so much? It
Right.
doesn't make sense. And anger, I'm not going to get into this deeply because it could be a whole episode in itself, but
Yeah.
there's like the concept of the anger iceberg is usually anger is that big thing at the surface that manifests as this big scary emotion, yelling at people and blaming people and maybe getting into physical altercations, but below it is a lot of other feelings that can be much more complex. But anger's easy.
Yeah.
Processing what's underneath it is harder.
Hmm. It's like I feel like a good analogy is like when you're trying to find one cable that you have, and all the cables that you have are all in one bin and they're all tied
Yeah.
together. You have to find it and then untie it.
Yep.
And I think it's just unraveling all those emotions to try to come to terms with it. Whereas the general thing is, like you said, much easier to just come across.
And this website, I like how they put it. It says anger is strength. It can be an anchor, giving temporary structure to the nothingness of loss. Anger can keep you going because it's a very strong emotion.
Hmm.
Maybe you need to feel angry in that moment because you're not ready to process the next stage.
Yeah.
You're not ready to feel the lows of the depression.
Hmm. I also feel like this could probably be one of the more dangerous stages to other people in your life where you're taking anger out on them.
Absolutely.
I feel like this is probably this and depression. I would probably say, I mean, we haven't talked about depression, but just kind of basing off of what I know are probably the most dangerous stages to other people or yourself, depending on like how you were feeling.
I read something at one point, I don't remember where it came from, but it talks about how a high percentage of couples that experience the loss of a child end up getting divorced pretty shortly after.
Hmm.
And I believe part of it is probably due to the anger.
Yeah.
It's hard not to play the blame game
Mhm.
because you're looking for a why, and it'd be easier for your brain to pin a why on someone that's not actually responsible than to accept that it might have just happened. There is no why.
Yeah.
The next stage is bargaining. What do you think bargaining entails?
It's like, going to a flea market and saying, like, "I'll pay you $20 for this."
See this Lego set here? I'm thinking, the box is kind of dinged up.
Best I can do is $5. Um, no, but say bargaining is probably, like, more of, like, an existential religious thing where bargaining with the universe, bargaining with God to try to bring the person back or trying to see them for a couple more minutes. I would say it's more of an existential. I mean, it's internal, but more existential than like internal emotion, if that makes sense. Even though it is an emotion that you're feeling, it's just like an more existential thing than an emotional thing.
Yeah, because typically you're bargaining with a higher power
Hmm.
because there's not much any living being can do to help you. Like, you can't go pay someone $20 to bring your husband back.
Yeah.
But oftentimes it looks like people saying, if you just let this be a dream, I swear I'll never be mad at that person ever again. I will never take them for granted ever again if you don't let them die.
Hmm.
Stuff like that. Um, it's also a stage with a lot of if only and what if kinds of statements. We want things to go back to the way they were, and we're looking at possible avenues where that could happen,
Hmm.
which likely don't exist. Bargaining does not seem very grounded in reality. I would say you could argue it's even part of denial.
Yeah. Yeah. Trying to, it's like a different type of denial. I feel like it's a mix between like denial and acceptance where like they're gone, but the denial aspect is, well, there might be a way to get them back.
Yeah.
Mm, so I think it's like a hybrid between those two different things, which I would I think it definitely makes sense, even though we just discussed that this isn't like a one track train. It can go all different places. I feel like bargaining makes sense in the middle because I think it's like, I don't know, like when you read this step by step, it does make sense that it'd be kind of a middle ground. But I mean, you could go from like anger, denial to bargaining or something like that. But you get where I'm coming from, where it kind of seems like a
Yeah.
mix.
That makes sense. And this website also talks about bargaining as um applied to not wanting to feel the pain
Hmm.
of the loss. So we might says we remain in the past trying to negotiate our way out of the hurt. So maybe that includes saying that you don't have to let yourself feel those feelings.
Hmm.
And like, I'm not going to feel this way because, maybe there's a way out.
Hmm.
Maybe we don't have to process this loss because maybe it's not real.
Yeah.
Then we move on to depression. And this is where I think Jenny is in the movie because she's watching the home videos, she's drinking, she's clearly not having a good time.
Hmm.
So the depression encompasses feelings of emptiness, and that's where the grief really, really starts to hit deep. And this stage might feel like it'll last forever because it's hard to really see outside of it when you're in it.
Hmm.
And it's very much a normal and appropriate response to a loss because grief and love are very intertwined. If you love someone, you're gonna miss them when they're gone, and you're gonna have to process that they're gone, and that includes having to come to terms with a lot of unpleasant emotions,
Mhm.
and realities. And this is the point where people ask themselves, is it even worth it to keep going?
Mhm.
Can I find a meaningful life with this loss as part of it now?
Mhm.
Is there anything in store for me in the future if I can't have this person by my side?
Could you also maybe make the argument that Jenny might also still be partly in denial too? With me, because I think you mentioned like a brief part in denial where it's like you're doing other things to try to like cope with the fact that they are gone, and then she's like drinking. Do you think maybe that could partially be with denial or?
No, I don't think so. Because I don't think she's drinking to act like it never happened. I think she's drinking because she's depressed because she knows it happened.
Mhm.
And she acknowledges that he's not coming back. I would say, though, there's an argument that her accepting Starman as a partner and eventually having a kid with him is a form of bargaining. Like, I can still have this piece of him. He doesn't have to fully be gone, which is kind of hard because in reality, that's not going to
Yeah,
happen.
right. Well, I mean, like, I think an idea of it could happen where maybe if you're pregnant with a loved one's child and then they die during the pregnancy or something like that. I feel like a part of it could happen, but yeah, I mean, like getting a kid
But
after the
then
fact
that's not
that.
really bargaining because you
But
didn't expect that they were going to die.
I don't think she ever bargained the Starman to have the child, though.
Well, it could have been her own internal battle. Like, I would be able to move on if I could just have this part of him.
It could have, but I don't know. I think she still probably would have ended up in a very similar place at the end if she didn't have the child. I think having the child is like a very. I almost take it as like an extremely nice gesture from the Starman. He's like, I know you wanted this thing because you had mentioned it, but if you don't want it, like I'll like take it away for you. I don't think she was. If now she was like, oh man, like I wish I had a child. Like she never really has a moment where she's like, I really wanted a child with Scott, but I can't because of X, Y, Z or whatever. She never has that moment.
Well, he
She,
already knows that.
yeah, but I mean that's where that's why I think it's more so like a nice gesture on his part rather than her having a bargaining for it.
Well, the reason I think of it as bargaining is because it allows her to better accept it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we haven't gotten to acceptance yet, but I feel like that could be part of it, accepting. Um,
But again, this doesn't happen in reality, so it's kind of hard to
yeah,
apply the 5 stages of grief because you don't get to have your partner die and then come back and then have a baby with them, but it's like an alien baby and they're kind of a part of them, but the baby's also connected to the alien planet.
yeah,
So, kinda hard to put it in a box that's meant for
right.
human grief.
I don't know. I think Starman's based on a true story, so I think this probably
You're
happened.
right, my bad. So, the last part, the last stage is acceptance. And acceptance is often confused with the notion of being everything's okay now. I am fully at peace with what happened, but that's not it. It's not that cut and dry. Grief never is.
Hmm.
You don't have to feel like the loss was justified or that there was a reason for it. Like some people like to believe that everything happens for a reason, and you don't have to think that way in order to reach acceptance. And you don't have to think like, oh, maybe my spouse was supposed to die.
Mhm.
Maybe this was God's plan. You don't have to think that in order to accept it, to
Mhm.
reach that acceptance stage. This stage is about accepting the reality that our loved one is physically gone and recognizing that this is the new reality and it's permanent. We'll never we don't have to like this reality, but we might accept it.
Mhm.
We can still wish that it was different, but realize that it's not going to be. You
Right.
can't bring them back. There's not going to be a future with that person in it anymore. And we have to learn to live with it. We have to figure out how to live a meaningful life with this newly accepted information that the person's gone. So, how do we move forward? So, acceptance is more about moving forward than it is being 100% okay with what
Mhm.
happened.
Yeah. And I feel like Jenny's acceptance state at the end is kind of like we were talking about at the ending, where we've gone through this journey with them. They have one final goodbye. Um, and also something we kind of forgot to touch on during like the beginning was her helping on Scott not saying goodbye. And he doesn't really understand the concept of goodbye. And you could clearly tell that she's talking about something else rather than
Yeah.
Scott saying
She
goodbye.
never got a goodbye with the real Scott. So, she's hoping to get one from Starman.
Right. So I mean that's definitely a clear like double meaning.
Parallel.
Yeah, parallel. Um so yeah, so I mean and then she gets that chance at the end to say goodbye to Scott and then has is pregnant with Scott's kid. This is a weird thing. We need to talk about that for a second. So is it Scott's kid or no? So
Yes,
it's
it's both.
yes. Okay, it's both. Yeah.
Yeah, because he said that the baby will have the knowledge of its home planet, but it's also going to have Scott's DNA.
Okay. Okay. And the baby gets the last orb.
Yes. And the baby will know what to do with it when the time comes, I guess.
Maybe that's what they're waiting on. They're waiting on making Starman 2 for so the baby can use the orb.
You're so right.
We've been waiting 41 years for this moment for the to figure out what the baby's gonna do with the orb.
This baby must be really dumb. 41 years and you haven't figured it out, and yet you've gotten this built-in knowledge. But I think that those things you were talking about, her being able to say the goodbye that she never was able to say and getting the baby both helped put her in the acceptance phase where she was beginning to be okay with um figuring out how to navigate her life moving forward.
Mhm.
Before it was like she was running in place, but I think at that point she's able to start thinking about looking forward and
Right.
what can the future look like from here. And a big part of acceptance is being able to not feel guilty about being happy, being able to make friends again and um, go on dates again and have positive memories without feeling like it's a betrayal to the
Mhm.
person that died.
Yeah. And would you say that Jenny being able to get that final goodbye is her way of acceptance?
I would say so. And in a real life application, this might look like, let's say you lost a loved one like Jenny in a traumatic accident. You
Mhm.
might write a letter to them and write out how you wish you got to say goodbye to them.
Yeah.
You could give yourself the kind of closure that life didn't give to you.
Mhm.
And it might not, I mean, it's not going to be as satisfying as if it happened in real life, but staying in the depths of the depression, you can't stay there forever.
Mhm. Yeah.
There's got to be a way forward. So if writing a letter or something like that allow you to figure out a path forward, then so be it.
Mhm.
Whatever helps you get that closure. For some people, it might be visiting the gravesite and talking to that person like they were standing in front of you. Grief can look so different to different people. And it's important to recognize that because, especially with prolonged grief disorder being a diagnosis, it kind of gives the impression that grief is supposed to look a very neat, organized way. And if it's outside of that, it's disordered. It's
Mhm.
wrong.
Yeah.
There's no wrong way to grieve.
Right, and, I mean, I guess the movie doesn't really tackle this too much, like, the different ways of grieving, because I feel like she just kinda grieves in one way, so, but
Well, she's one person. She's just one example of grief.
yeah, so and I mean, she gets the luxury of seeing her husband again physically and getting that final goodbye, which other people don't get the opportunity to because this is a fictional story as we covered before. So
And you know what? To some people, they might have a dream where they got to say goodbye to that person, and that could be what gives them closure.
mhm,
Some people say that their loved ones continue to speak to them after death, and that can give them closure as well.
yeah.
And also, there's such a cultural element to grief. Different cultures grieve differently. And I'm not going to go into the details of what that looks like in different cultures, but just to put out there that the DSM is not exactly culturally sensitive.
What? No.
Just important to note that because the DSM is kind of regarded as the psychology Bible or the therapy Bible. And there's a lot of fucking problems with it.
Mhm,
And having that nuanced conversation is important because I don't want people to think that just because this is what I have to use to diagnose people, it means I 110% believe that.
right.
I think oftentimes, um, prolonged grief disorder, to me, I might just call that trauma
Mhm,
because I don't believe in prolonged grief disorder. I think it's a bunch of BS, but it can present very much like trauma, and I'd be far more inclined to diagnose a trauma-based disorder than prolonged grief disorder.
right. Yeah. Oh, I can't really talk about what I diagnose my clients because I don't have any clients because 'cause I'm a film major,
Diagnose
so
them with poor.
diagnose them before diagnose you with bad education decisions.
I diagnose you with student debt.
Oh god, I've been diagnosed with that. I have student debt terminally. Um,
No, it's only like, what, 30 years? How many years you got to pay it off?
no, I've been paying it down, okay? It's only like I think like 15.
Okay, it's not terminal, it's chronic.
It's chronic, yeah. I'm gonna be paying it a long time. I'll be chronically ill by the time I pay off my student loans of something else. Um, but yeah, anything else that we kind of missed? Maybe we'll tie back to the movie a little bit, or
I don't feel like I have a lot more to add because I don't know, I feel like throughout the movie, she was really in 1 or 2 phases
Mhm,
and then reaches that 2nd or 3rd acceptance stage. So there's not much to say for the others. But I think we already covered the ones that she was in and what that looks like and what that would look like if you don't get an alien visitor
mhm.
and
Well,
an alien baby.
I guess we did it. We have discussed everything about Starman. No one ever needs to talk about this movie ever again because we've discussed
Nope,
every single topic.
correct. You don't need to listen to any other podcast ever again. Just
Just
ours.
we talked about everything. So, but yeah, that's about it. After this podcast, I'm gonna head on grief.com, play Papa's Grieferia. So, um, but yeah, thank you for watching, for listening. you don't watch this. If you watch your screen tick down for the last second of our podcast, I'm gonna ask what's wrong with you. But thank you for listening.
If you somehow access the security cameras in our home, I'm scared.
We don't have one in this room though. Hopefully, at least
I don't know unless someone bugged it.
someone could have
Oh,
bugged it.
a
Oh,
super fan,
super
a
fan.
podcast super fan.
The couple Russian listeners that we have.
Shout out.
Shout out to our Russians. Um, but yeah, that's about that. Um, Thank you for listening. Give us a follow on all of our social medias, all of the thingies.
Download our episodes. I heard that helps.
Yep.
I don't really know what it does, but do it because it helps us
Yeah.
somehow.
And rate our show. That's a big
5
help.
stars. Only if you're
Stars.
gonna rate us 5 stars
Yeah.
because we're obviously the best.
Give what Kate would hypothetically give this movie on Letterbox if she had a letterbox, which is 5 stars.
And we'll never have a letterbox.
Eh, you're gonna rue the day when you say that and you download a letterbox.
Here's the thing. I'm so stubborn that even if I was inclined to download it, because you just said that, I'm
You're not
going to
gonna
make sure
you're not gonna
I never do
remember
it.
this.
Bitch, be for real.
You're not gonna remember this.
Be for real. You know I remember unimportant things so I can hang them over people's heads
What did you
later
have for
on.
breakfast?
Fucking Reese's Puffs, bitch.
How many?
1.5 bowls.
Anyways, thank you for listening. Check out our Mickey 17 episode if you haven't.
I was pretty proud of that
It's a
one.
pretty good episode. All the Mickeys. We don't even know what we're covering next.
I rated 17 Mickeys.
out of 5. Um, but yeah, we don't know what we're covering next, so be in for a
But it's
big
gonna be
surprise.
my pick.
It's gonna be your pick, so
See what
it's
happens.
not gonna be as good as my movie. But
I'm kind of thinking might be The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Chronicles of Narnia. We'll see. We'll see.
I've never seen it, so I don't have much of an
That's
opinion.
exactly why I'm trying to expose you to it.
Um, but yeah, if I get exposed to The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, we'll let you know. But in the
Exposed.
exposed, if I get
Lion,
exposed.
Witch, and Wardrobe exposed.
But yeah, thank you for listening, and have a great day.
Deuces.
Deuces.